Next up, I would like to introduce someone who was recently inducted into the Norwegian Academy of Arts and Letters. Professor Joel Walker Rettberg, co-director of the Center for Digital Narrative.
I feel like I've always known you, Joe. I guess I knew about the electronic book review very early on. And it was when I was just I was just starting my PhD. No, the journal started before I started my PhD, but it started around the same time as I discovered hypertext fiction and the idea of there being an online journal that was a real scholarly journal and also had this space for new kinds of scholarly communication was really important to me, and I know many others, many others in the field. I probably didn't really meet you until Scott and I were in Chicago and then at ELO conferences. You were the president of the ELO at what might have been my first ELO conference in 2007. And then we spent a month in Chicago in 2008, I think, and where we gave talks for your students. And I remember being shown around that crazy labyrinth of a campus that you had at UIC.
With all of the concrete. And I never saw anything like that until I got here.
The brutalist aesthetics. That is the true core of your career, perhaps. Maybe not.
Joe brings a soft touch and a soft voice to a brutalist environment.
That's the word.
We came back to Chicago in 2014 for a whole semester, and we actually rented your apartment, the famous apartment of Parties on Division Street. And we brought two little kids, and so at first we didn't have parties there, but Scott kept telling me about these parties, and that the book rack was still there where you could place books like in a library, so they face you instead of them being anonymous, just on a big road. And it was such an inspiring place to live, to write, to think. And luckily we did manage to have party. We had you over for dinner there, and we had a celebration for the ELO's 15th anniversary, which I think you were in I don't remember now. Were you at that one? Or were you away for that?
Yeah, there's a picture here.
There is indeed. Beautiful. Joe's always been a builder of communities, from the parties to the journals to the other networks. And you've been a champion of early career scholars. You've published books and independent works, but what I think, and those are a legacy, but what I think is even more important is these platforms you've created, these networks where people have been able to meet, where people have been able to exchange ideas, and especially the things you've done for early career scholars, like through when you were leading the ELO, establishing the ELO Fellows program, for example, where PhD students were given small stipends and brought in to actually contribute in ways that were peer-reviewed, that gave academic merit. You've always thought about how young scholars can contribute to the community in a way that's recognized and they can put on their CV. In fact, in about a week, we have a new postdoc arriving here who was an ELO scholar and has remarked on what a great program that was, Joe. I think this is something you've carried through. I remember when one of these times we were in Chicago and we saw, we were talking about the ELD, the Electronic Literature Directory, and I think a lot of the ideas for the knowledge base, which was established here and has grown a lot, and is part of what's, has helped us develop the field here, that came out of work that you were doing there. So very much inspiring there. After you moved to Bergen, we've gotten to know each other even more, and we've become really good friends as well as colleagues, which has been a pleasure. And you've continued to bring in collaborators from Stuttgart, Malta, Germany, the United States, of course, and just really orchestrating these inspiring conversations and productive meetings. And of course, you were instrumental in developing the application for the Center of Digital Narrative. And you've been a really big part of imagining in these early years and preparing it, of course, but what could a center like this be? And one of the things a center should be is a place to support young researchers and to provide networks and conversations. You've always been a really generous reader and editor, and you've read and given me feedback on many of the things I've written, most recently my machine vision book, which was great. You caught a lot of typos, but you also had some really concrete ideas and things that I changed a little bit based on your feedback. And I'll always appreciate you.
Concrete ideas that came from the buildings I was working in.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'll always appreciate you as an editor and as a friend. I've lived in your apartment, you've stayed in ours, you've had dinner at our table dozens of times. I haven't actually counted, but maybe it's hundreds, I don't know. But I have really enjoyed that over the years. And we've talked about everything from electronic literature to music, food, ideas, all sorts of things for many years now. So thank you, Joe, for being a good friend and a good collaborator for many years.